So Hostmaker, we bring hotel-style technology and services to homes. So very much capitalizing on this wave over the last decade or so in homestays, where there's been flexibility in how homes are now no longer just residential accommodation, but are now an important category in travel accommodation. And so with my background, I used to work for Starwood Hotels and in Intercontinental Hotels previously. So we're bringing the dynamic pricing in hotel real estate, the interior design concept of travel, and the hospitality operation. So those three things we're bringing to this new category in travel accommodation, which is homes. And we work with property owners, whether it's individual property owners, institutional investors, and we recently partnered with Marriott Hotels internationally. We have a partnership with them now across Europe. We're now in 8 European capitals. And we recently launched our first market outside Europe in Bangkok, and there's a couple of new markets coming up in Q4. So that's Hostmaker.
Great, Csongor.
Hello, everybody. Hi, everybody. At property management at BNP Paribas Real Estate, we are more and more looking at technology because we are facing several challenges: decreasing margins, increasing salaries, increasing expectations, increasing competition, not only at property management level, but all align the supply chain, let it be asset management and investors. And asset managers looks at property management as partners to compete with other leasing schemes. And for that, we need to ensure that we are fulfilling our basic roles. So we are still providing the basic services in a perfect quality, but at the same time to integrate technology to help us in these facing these challenges. And at BNP Paribas Estate Property Management, we have launched several initiatives, which I'm happy to talk about in the next minutes.
Great, and interestingly, Csongor has been on a number of these panels. It's been interesting to see how Proptech and innovation as a discussion topic has changed even over the last kind of 18 months to 2 years. I think that's been fascinating. Guillaume, let's get an update on you and also Altus. Plainly, anybody with eyes can see that Altus are also here. So thank you for that, and also for co-hosting the session with us as well. That's great. Give us an update on what you're doing, and particularly within this sector.
Yeah, thank you very much. So my name is Guillaume, and I'm a fairly recent addition to the Altus Group family since July 1st. Altus Group is a company, a leading provider, global provider of data solutions, software solutions, and advisory and expert services for the commercial real estate. Before that, I've been working and founding a company called Allianz, specialized in investment management platforms, systems and technologies. And we recently got married with Altus Group to try and provide a global platform to manage data, software solutions around the globe for commercial real estate, going from the real estate valuations up to the fund performance and analytics.
Okay, great. Sébastien.
Good afternoon, everyone. So Allianz, so we are an investor, we are a long-term investor, and that's probably the reason why I'm wearing tie today, to distinguish myself. We, as a long-term investor, we have to think about what's going to be the future, and that's really key within what we do in order to provide the product that will be the next standard on the market. And for that, we are deeply involved in Proptech and innovation, and we'll get there, but our first topic is data, how to gather data from our building in a way that is conceptually different than what is done in the car industry, but we'll talk about that.
Okay, great.
Just a few numbers on Allianz. So it's a 61 billion asset under management worldwide, 32 countries, 14 offices, and in France, it's a 7 billion investment, asset under investment.
Let's pick up on a couple of things. Guillaume, I mean, we've seen technology transforming the real estate sector to an extent I think few could have predicted only a relatively recent period of time ago. We've also seen it impact our everyday lives. What's your sense of how much data, mobile technology, these kinds of trends are influencing real estate? How do you see it where we are at the moment?
Yeah, probably the many sectors in the B2B are very much behind in terms of what we see in our daily lives. We all use mobile phones, we all use very simple system and apps and access to broad ranges of data. And actually, when we look at the investment world, data is scattered, siloed, difficult to aggregate, difficult to find, difficult to compare. So we are probably 5 to 10 years late compared to what we see in the current B2C markets. And I think the whole wave of technology right now will take over. The data starts to be centralized. The cloud platforms are getting on the market right now. The technology is there. It's just finding the right way to use it, the right way to play this game and provide this level of service to the people who really need it on their daily work. And I really feel, it's been 20 years I'm in this business. I really feel the wave is here now and it's coming up in the next 2 or 3 years. There will be a huge difference in the way we use technology in the real estate.
Okay, good. And Csongor, just give me an update. Obviously, from an asset management, property management side, being able to boost and bolster returns is very important. But in terms of BNP Real Estate and the strategy, why are you focusing so much on innovation and technology? Is that driven by clients? Where are you in that part of the discussion?
In fact, the real estate market has changed. That is one thing. So the occupiers' needs have changed. There are some other not traditional players who are claiming that are knowing better the occupier needs, like co-working operators. This is putting a pressure on the traditional supply chain. So, and property management is part of it. Property management is a business who is managing data, a lot of data. Probably not exploring it properly, and second, property management is an industry which is very close to the occupiers, to the tenants. So who else could provide a better insight in what is happening in the building of the asset managers and the owners than the property management? Are we up to this challenge? Not really, or at least not at a scalable way. Because it will remain a very human business. And when it's a human business, okay, if you have good people, then on that part of the business where you have the good people, you provide good insight. But as the technology and also the economy and the investment appetite, it leads investors to have pan-European investments and cross-border, cross-asset class, cross-risk profile portfolios. You need to have a more or less scalable solution. And for that, the good news is that the technology has evolved. You are able to automatize more and more processes, but then leads, of course, to the concern, okay, if you are automatizing and digitalizing too much, will you still take care of your basics and to the human relationship? And it is the challenge why we believe already in the past we have faced these two aspects, data and human, and it will be much more important in the future. So we as property management, we cannot avoid deal with that.
And
yeah, go ahead, yeah.
If I may, the value chain creation is coming from the investment management to the facility management, and the property management is fully part of it. And as an asset manager, we have to choose a property manager, and definitely we will not choose a property manager that will not allow us to continue and to improve on that value chain. So that's why it's a very important topic for all the different players on that market, on that industry today.
Okay, good. Nakul, I want to dig down a little bit more into what Hostmaker are doing. So obviously you've set up something which helps Airbnb or hosts, which was originally designed obviously to be a disruptor or an innovator, depending on how you see that. And are you then now looking to move that into more of a commercial sector opportunity? Is that something that you're now bringing more into the real estate sector? What's the position?
Yeah, so again, I think I drew very heavily on my background coming from international hotels. that if you believe that homes are now a category in travel accommodation, then a lot of the dynamics that exist in hotel real estate will start to transfer into residential real estate, which is designed for travel. And that is essentially the intersection at which we are playing. So if you kind of think about homes now, 20% of the stays in our homes, the homes that we manage, are longer than 30 days. That's not just a traveler who's coming for a 3-night stay or a city break. And we're starting to see several different use cases where you can essentially think of, say in the past you would have a short stay, so a 3-night stay would be a hotel, a midterm 1-month stay would be a service department, and a home would be where you lived. Now those lines are blurring. So for 3 nights or 30 nights or 300 nights, you can be using a home for whatever type of stay. And that, I think, is the flexibility that we've started to see in our business, and the way that whether it's travelers, whether it's corporate people who are coming over maybe for a secondment, for a project, who may be looking for that flexibility of location, are coming to us and saying, because our homes are furnished, because we are distributed across the whole city, so we're not 1,000 rooms in 2-3 apartment blocks, but we're 1,000 homes spread all over the city. That's huge flexibility, and that's huge advantage to corporates and to people who are maybe even just exploring different neighborhoods in their own city. And that is, I think, a really important transition that's happening, where we're starting to talk to institutional real estate owners, funds, developers, that you can actually be flexible in the way that your assets are being used. And we can actually help deliver superior returns to just being locked down to a conventional long-term rental. And you could be maximizing your returns by using this same asset in different ways during different times of the year. And I think that's the flexibility that we've developed through our technology and through our operations. And Airbnb was just another channel. So it helped make this category sexy and popular, but it wasn't the only thing driving the space. I think if you think about the whole dynamics after the financial crisis, where literally the hotel developers, capital almost froze for them after the financial crisis. And so hotels are actually running at all-time high occupancies for the last decade. There's barely any hotels being built in city centers. And therefore, there's a lot of overflow demand that is coming into big urban markets, say 20, 30 big urban markets around the world, that needs a place to stay. And they're liking the experience in homes, and we're essentially elevating that experience.
Okay, good. I mean, that's interesting, and I'm going to come to you in a second, Csongor, on that. But Guillaume, we've there got a concrete way of how something that might have been seen as a disruptor, and 2 years ago everybody was being very fearful of disruption coming into the industry, but it now looks as though it's becoming a collaboration and very possibly a solution in a funny kind of way, which is a big change. What are you seeing in terms of the way, I guess, your clients, the people you're working with, are using data, technology? Has that changed, and has their expectation changed of what you can deliver?
It hasn't changed so much, but it needs to change quite a lot. Because it's all about the data in the end. I mean, every investment manager is trying to find the right level of data, whether they are raw data or market intelligence or knowledge around a project or a building or an asset or a tenant. And all this data is currently locked into different databases, locked into different systems, locked into very hard to grab and very hard to understand, very hard to benchmark and analyze. So I think the whole change in the technology sector that's happening now, it's not whether it's a web platform or whether it's a cloud platform. It's being able to centralize the data, harmonize the data, ingest the data using deep learning technologies, use this data using artificial intelligence, and make it available to our clients 24/7, securely, safely, wherever they are in the world, and making sure that everybody is collectively working and collaboratively working around the same set of data, rather than having different images and different sets of data. So from a very practical standpoint, clients start to centralize their information, the property management information, rent roll information, accounting information, SPVs, funds, performance, investors information in single databases, single place to store this information and put in place the processes that help this data grow in quality and getting shared 24/7 with all parties, whether they are internal parties or external parties. It's like a dream for many of our clients, and now it's starting to come to life, and it really makes a big difference when you can access this information from anywhere at any point in time.
And to follow up on that, because we have a slightly different approach, because this is we are investment manager and you are a software provider. Let me give you an example of one asset that we have in Paris, in the heart of Paris, in the Golden Triangle of Paris, in Avenue Georges V. It's going under heavy refurbishment as we speak, and we decided to have 2 certifications on that building, not any kind of HKI, BREEAM, LEED, and so on, but one is WireScore, just to make sure that the building will be connected, and everywhere in the building, not 3 meters from the window, but even in the elevator, you will be connected in the whole building. That's very important for us. And the second certification is R2S, which is ready to service. And that's a slightly different approach. We are making sure that the building will be ready to provide data, to store and to provide data, but we will not get into the data analysis, machine learning and AI and so on, because this is not our job. And furthermore, we don't know what's going to be the customer requirement. He can do whatever he wants with the data. We don't know that, but our job, I think, is to make sure that the building will be ready to fulfill any kind of requirement from our customer. And that's going to be Guillaume's job to make it happen.
Okay, good. And Csongor, maybe pick that up for us, because that obviously suggests then that all of the buildings, whether that's new build or existing stock, will need to be transformed so that they can collect this kind of data. Is your expectation that Sébastien is obviously a very collaborative person and is happy to share his data in order to improve the overall data so that you can then learn more from that? Is that what the industry will need to do? How far are we down the line, and what's your expectation of everybody actually wanting to share the data?
So clearly, the data in itself worth nothing. The value will come if it satisfies a need, if it brings a solution. So data in itself, it's and especially if it's not correlated with another data. So property management data, it's good for providing our services, to fulfilling the scope, to make the reportings and so on and so on. But afterwards, if you want to let's say generate some value, then you need to cross with additional set of data. And we are looking, okay, how we can first capture who is having this data, where it's coming from, is it scalable, is it automatic? Because if it is not automatic, then you always need to clean the data and so on, then it will kill the business model behind. And then you need, of course, to check how you can set up all this, let's say, cooperation, because alone, ourselves, we realize that we cannot do anything without having the right partners. And partners for many reasons. First, to have additional data, and I can tell you, we are not talking about any more disruption, in my view, because disruption, it means that you challenge the old traditional way of doing things. And the traditional players, the well-established players, are ready to do so. And they are doing themselves. And when somebody's doing on itself, I call it not a disruption, but a transformation. But when we're doing it with somebody else, then it's a cooperation for transforming the industry. And that's why we welcome Hostmaker, for example, to work together and to find better solutions to investors and to client needs. So when you ask me what I feel and what I see, yes, I see a lot of willingness and good intention to collaborate in order to put together the data and to find some value in it. And we have some concrete examples, but I don't want to keep too long.
Although we don't have any legal framework today, that's a huge topic. Of course, we are willing to make progress on that, so to share. but we are. Is the tenant willing to do so? That's a question mark. Huh? Without any legal framework so far, I'm not sure we can say what's going to happen. We are different players. Our willingness will be maybe different. So we'll see. But
if I may,
it's a difficult topic.
Yeah, it's a very good topic, and which is interesting. Are you happy to share your geolocalization where you are being? Normally, you would say no. It's my privacy. I don't want to share. I don't want others to know where I am. And still, I don't know. Here, 50% of the people, I think, they have in their iPhone activated their geolocalization. Why? Because they see the benefit. The problem is then the concerns coming from not willing to share the data when you don't see the benefit. And that's, of course, our role as players of the real estate industry to show the benefit. And I think there is a lot of benefit.
Okay, good. I'm glad, Nakul, that I don't need to call you a disruptor any longer, that you're actually a transformer, which is very good. I like the idea of that. Do you think that, you're obviously operating in the sort of guest space, the hospitality space in a way. Do you think, there's been a lot of discussion in both the office discussion that we had earlier about WeWork and those kind of flexible office space providers coming in and again challenging the market. What's your sense of how what you are doing at the moment could potentially also then be used for whether it's pop-up shops in shopping centres, whether it's occupier space in offices? How much of a demand is there, and do you think that could actually also increase returns in different sectors other than just hospitality?
Yeah, I'll give you a couple of really interesting use cases which actually surprise us in how property owners are using us. I think one really interesting one is with the Brexit story as a hot topic. Obviously, sales have fallen in the UK almost 10-15% down on the previous year. Rental returns have fallen almost 10-15%. Other factors as well, but Brexit is an important one. So property owners are coming to us and saying, help me tide over the next 6 months of uncertainty and just let my place out for the next 6 months so that I can still be covering my mortgage payments. And that's not just an individual property owner, but an investor who's saying, I don't necessarily want to liquidate my asset portfolio and therefore help me see out the uncertainty. So that's one example where we're talking to property developers because we're able to activate the property literally within 4 weeks. So even if it's an unfurnished apartment, we have an interior design team, we furnish, we work with design partners, and literally by listing across short-term rentals, mid-term rentals, we can create that flexibility for property owners that you're not tied into a 1-year contract or a 2-year contract and can actually be like that pop-up hotel or pop-up rental accommodation where you can activate and deactivate very, very quickly. So that's really one very interesting use case. Second one, if you take the example of, say, Wimbledon or you have Roland Garros in Paris, and I mean, this is not new, it's been happening forever, that when you have these peak events, hotels will be sold out, a lot of property owners in the area will leave the neighborhood because it's really busy, and that is something that we're now supporting, where we're saying, look, we could actually pay you to go away. If you actually want to go take a holiday because it's really busy, we'll put money in your pocket, and actually this becomes a property that someone else could use for those 2 weeks or for 4 weeks. That's another really interesting use case of a pop-up hotel or a pop-up accommodation. And then we're talking to institutional partners, BNP is one of them, where we're actually thinking about an investment concept in the future of saying, if there was a propco sitting next to us, now that we've got our track record across 8 different European markets of what's the right spec of home. So is this a 2-bedroom, 60 square meter property that is the right type of accommodation for a couple while they stay in a home for 70% of the time? But for the 30% of the time that they may be traveling, is this still attractive to someone who wants to use this for the short period of time? And that's the analytics which we're able to now talk to, advise and talk to institutions about saying, how do you build so that you can actually uplift your yields? And I think that's a new phase in our journey.
Okay, good. And Guillaume, just give me some concrete examples of how what you're doing there at Altus, and also you mentioned the investment management side as well as the asset management side, in terms of how that's maybe progressed and what clients are using it for in order to generate better returns or create less risk. Just give us some idea of what people are using in a practical way.
Right. The whole topic for me is how can we enable our client to manage performance and risk. So through dedicated technology platforms. And the idea behind this is that all this data has to be unlocked, centralized, put into the hands of all the people who need to make decisions on a daily basis, whether they need to rent something, or to buy a new asset, or to dispose of an asset, or to control risk and exposure at a fund level. So there are many components to get to that point. The first thing is to understand that it's all about the data and the workflows around this data so that people can work together around this data. And to manage some processes which currently are very burdensome. So we talk a lot about the quarterly reporting, which is always taking a lot of resources, internal resources to build. We talk about the budgeting process. When we use this word about the budgeting process, everybody is scared because it takes months to get budget set up and running and then reforecast. But these are essential pieces of the performance management. That's why you define the performance you're targeting. That's why you track your performance. And if you can get these tools and data and systems much smoother, much easier to share, much more collaborative, then everybody is making a huge leap forward. And the other piece that we are very much working on is that all these elements also need market intelligence. They need benchmark, they need data, and more, all this data is gathered around the world in cloud databases. And these cloud databases, we have to unlock them to allow for comparison, comparing your cost, comparing your taxes, comparing your performance, and being able at any point in time to know where you are compared to other offices, other buildings, or your competition in this or that segment. And when this information will be available instantly, I think it will make a huge difference for operators.
Okay, good. Yep, Sébastien, pick that up because I think that's an interesting point.
I completely agree. I wanted also to come back on the use cases because it's true that the office component is lagging behind hospitality and retail. But I mean, we found a lot of use cases. I'm not going to go through them, but 3 areas. First is security. Second is services to tenant, to occupier, and the third one is ESG, and that's a whole different topic that digitization will definitely help. To go back on the return, is digitization going to drive returns for investors like us? Yes, we need to invest, that's for sure. But to be completely honest, having a few sensors, having a cloud system shared across 61 billion of investment, that's not going to be a huge difference for us. But in terms of service, it's going to make a tenant, an occupier choose your building versus another one. That's going to make a tenant stay in your building rather than be going into another one because you like the service and you have to live in the service. Security, think about security. When you know exactly who is in your building, last week in our building in La Défense, it's a tower, we did a test, evacuation test, you still have people walking around finding people, which didn't go downstairs, Tomorrow, you will be able to monitor that and to go exactly where you see people. And that's going to be a huge difference from a security standpoint. And as you may know, an office towers, the security concerns are huge, and it's going to change the way we operate those towers tomorrow. That's just one example, and use cases are tremendous. And to go back to what you say, yes, today we do real estate with a lot of assumptions. We don't know. We are taking decisions on a daily basis. We think we took the right decision. Well, most of the case it is, but we lack, data and information. That's really true what you just said.
I mean, it's interesting picking up the point you made there about ESG and sustainability, because we had a session on sustainability, carbon neutral yesterday, and one of the things that everybody was saying was that, you know, you can get a benchmark for a fund, but it's very difficult to get benchmarks and information on what other people are doing with sustainability, which will then help drive that forward. But certainly one of the key things that they were looking at was how technology, big data will play a big part in that, and the hope, I guess, that that's going to make a huge leap at some point once that becomes available. And is that something that's also important for you, Csongor, in terms of sustainability, ESG, and driving that responsible investment side of it, using innovation and technology?
Definitely, it's another initiative within BNP Paribas Real Estate Property Management. We are working together. I would like to reflect on another point, probably add 2 use cases, and then to talk what is the impact on the industry in terms of valuation perspective. Because I think the, the profession of valuers is not yet prepared to the new ways of usage of spaces. But before talking about that, is the other use cases. Because you have underused spaces, always. You have temporary vacancies. You can have like my example is always to tell in a glass, if you put big stones, then smaller stones, then sand and then water, it's totally full. But if you put only big stones, so long-term leases, it's difficult to optimize the vacancies. You will always have residual vacancy. So flexibility is always helping. The question is, what are the tools for doing that, and how you can anticipate the vacancy, and how we can do that. And anticipating is about understanding the tenant's behavior in a building. And for example, if a tenant is doing wrong, is not able to pay its rent, probably they are willing to shrink or even give up space. The other one next to it is willing to grow. They are doing so well. And if we could anticipate, we could just quickly go to one tenant saying, okay, we take back some space. We even increase the rent because you are now renting a smaller space, and we're giving to the other one. We increase the NOI, we secure both tenants, and everybody is happy. Are we able to anticipate that? There are a lot of information which helps us to indicate whether a tenant is doing well or not. A number of visitors, number of turnover in terms of staff, number of how intensively they are using the services in a building, how late they are paying their rents. All this data is available almost automatically, just we are not using and putting together to create a predictive model. So this is clearly a use case on which we are working. It's on that. But when you are using flexibility, like Hostmaker is doing to yield management, the problem is it's not taken into account by the valuers, saying that it's not long-term. They cannot capitalize on that because it's only statistically, okay, you are renting up 1 week or 2 days, okay, it's fine, it's extra money, but it's not contributing to the value of the property. And it's a pity because more and more we will see that this is a bigger part of the revenue. So I think in property management there will be, of course, an impact how we are providing services, as in asset management, as facility management, but also on other industries, real estate industries like valuation.
Okay, good. We're coming up to the end of our time, sadly. Does anybody have a question that they wanted to ask? I've got one more that I definitely want to ask before we finish. Let's look a little bit into the future now. I'm now going to cross out the word disruptor that I've written down here in this question. So let's say, and this is to all of you, and I'd be very surprised if you all give the same answer, so it'll be interesting to see what happens, which is, what do you see as the key transformer, not disruptor, and also what do you see as the biggest opportunity that can come out of this kind of transformation in terms of tech, data, innovation? So really kind of, what do we think the big things are, and what's next? So let's start with you, Sébastien. Just give us an idea of where you see that and what's next.
Well, it's hard to say, but I really think that what's next is data gathering. You know, we are producing data wherever we are, you know, in our car, in our building, in the social network with our phone every day. And today, those set of data are scattered and not combined. And I'm just thinking that's just a technological issue and that's not difficult to combine those data and to provide services to everyone. I don't know if I saw the series Black Mirror, you know, and that's exactly it. That's exactly it. How to have interfaces to, you know, to help people and using data from everywhere. I think the next big thing is data gathering.
Okay, good, Guillaume.
Yeah, somehow I think we're lucky in the real estate industry because the asset is real and it's there to stay. And I can see a future where each asset in the world will be uniquely identified and all the data history, everything that's happened, every tenant, every evolution of the asset will be accessible somewhere, somehow, whether it's a blockchain or whether it's a secured place for this data, but it will be transmissible from one owner to the next one. And we will stop losing all this wealth of data that's been accumulated over time because the asset is here to stay. So the day we have an ID for each asset in the world and we can start storing this data and accessing it afterward, I think it will be a big change.
Okay, great. Csongor.
So definitely data will help us in many things. First, to become more intelligent, to optimize the usage of resources, let it be space, human resources, data in itself, as to anticipate, to predict, and in fact, the more, so everything is fine. We can use even more flexibly the resources. We can create value by that. But at the end of the day, it will not be the artificial intelligence which will differentiate ourselves, because everybody will use artificial intelligence. Everybody will predict better or worse. But at the end of the day, I think the more we digitalize, the more the human factor will become important. And the real differentiator will be how humans will be able to integrate the technology and use it to improve the human experience.
Okay, good. Nakul.
So as a small, fast-growing business, I think our horizon in the future is maybe 3 months or 6 months. And so for us, I think what we see beyond this quarter and next quarter is that very much the flexibility, firstly, of use of real estate is something that is being adopted by property owners, asset managers, investors more and more. Secondly, we see accessibility of platforms. So the things that perhaps the hotel industry or airlines have used previously to maximize returns out of big, heavy assets, I think that is starting to become more popular and more sophisticated in residential asset management or investment. So I think residential asset class perhaps previously has been quite localized. Generally, hyper-local is what you really associate with residential investments. But I think over the last decade, as it's become more institutional, as asset managers and as investors are looking pan-Europe or even global, they're demanding more out of that asset. And therefore, there are more platforms, more tools being developed for better guest or tenant experience, or for the property manager to deliver better returns to the landlord or to the investor. So those are two things that we're seeing.
That's great. And we've finished perfectly on time.